So how in the world do you summarize 4,000 years of continuous history in just a few minutes? Honestly, it's like trying to capture a great river in a single cup. But just like a river, Chinese history has this powerful, driving current that has shaped the world we live in today. And it really all flows from a single core idea. The engine that's been driving this historical river is a concept called the mandate of heaven. It's a pretty simple but incredibly profound idea. A dynasty's right to rule isn't permanent. It's granted by a divine power. And, this is the key part, it can be taken away if the rulers become corrupt or incompetent. This belief created a cyclical pattern that you see again and again, dynasties rising, flourishing, decaying, and ultimately being replaced. So where does this river of history even begin? Well, like a lot of great civilizations, it starts with a literal river. Right here. This is the Yellow River Basin, the absolute cradle of Chinese civilization. But what's really fascinating about this map is that it shows China didn't just spring from a single point. It was more like a fusion of different cultures, like the Yangshao and Langshan, that grew and eventually merged along these fertile riverbanks.
Okay, this is where history really starts to speak to us. What you're looking at is an oracle bone from the Shang dynasty, which is the first dynasty that left us written records. Kings would carve questions onto these bones, heat them till they cracked, and then they'd interpret the patterns to talk with their ancestors. So the crucial point here is, this isn't just writing, it's a tool of power. It was seen as a direct line to the divine that legitimized their right to rule.
Now let's jump forward to the Zhou dynasty and see how this idea evolves. This bronze vessel, it's not just a beautiful object, it's basically a historical document. The inscriptions on it record 5 whole generations of a single family, linking their honor directly to the ruling house. It's a brilliant illustration of this growing sophistication, of using art and writing to solidify power and build a lasting legacy. After centuries of rule, the Zhou dynasty started to weaken, and it splintered into dozens of warring states. That river of history became, well, a chaotic flood, until one state rose up to channel all of that energy with just brutal, overwhelming force. 15 years, that's it. That's how long the Qin dynasty, China's very first imperial dynasty, lasted. It was one of the shortest in history, but you could argue it was one of the most important. In that decade and a half, it forged the template for China that would last for the next 2,000 years. The first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, didn't just conquer his rivals, he totally remade their world. He forced a single identity onto this vast and diverse land by standardizing everything you can think of, from the width of a cart's axle to the characters people wrote with. It was a ruthless, top-down unification for sure, but it laid the groundwork for the modern Chinese state. And if you really want to grasp the sheer scale of his ambition and power, you just have to look at his tomb. He had an entire army of life-size terracotta warriors built to protect him in the afterlife. And every single soldier has a unique face. This wasn't just a tomb, it was a declaration of absolute unprecedented power. Now, the Qin's brutality led to its quick collapse, but that unified empire it created, that idea endured. What came next were these incredible periods of cultural achievement, what we call golden ages, but also brand new threats from beyond China's borders. So China saw 2 really remarkable golden ages. The Tang was this confident, cosmopolitan empire totally open to the world through the Silk Road. The Song, on the other hand, was a period of incredible internal innovation. I mean, while Europe was in the Middle Ages, the Song dynasty was busy inventing gunpowder, the compass, and movable type printing, technologies that would literally change the entire world. But then, an unstoppable force swept in from the north. The Mongols, led by the grandson of Genghis Khan, did what no one had ever done before. They conquered all of China. For the very first time, the entire civilization was under foreign rule. This was a massive shock to the system, and it established the Yuan dynasty. Eventually, the Mongols were driven out, and native Chinese rule was restored under the Ming. But the final imperial dynasties would oversee a period of incredible consolidation and ultimately stagnation that left China really vulnerable to a new set of threats. The Ming dynasty really reasserted Chinese identity. They're the ones who completed the Great Wall that we see today, and they briefly sent these enormous fleets all across the Indian Ocean. But it was the Qing dynasty, another group of invaders from the north, that would be the last. They expanded the empire to its greatest extent,
But over time, they grew resistant to change, which left them vulnerable to immense pressure both from inside and from a newly aggressive West.
The dynastic cycle, that engine of Chinese history for millennia, it finally broke down. The river of history was about to meet the turbulent sea of modernity, and the result was a century of radical, violent, and transformative change.
Just look at this timeline. It's wild. In less than 100 years, China went from imperial collapse in 1912, through decades of civil war and foreign invasion, to the establishment of the Communist People's Republic in 1949. And then, in another historic shift, it opened up its economy and became the global manufacturing powerhouse we all know today.
Which brings us right back to where we started, to that core idea. For thousands of years, the mandate of heaven was all about ensuring stability and prosperity for the people. So, after a century of the most rapid transformation in human history, the question remains, in this new era, what is China's mandate, and how will it be judged by history?